First, I want to thank Pastor Ross for allowing me to share this with you, something near and dear to my heart. And it came at a perfect time. So about a month before retirement, this particular group called Mosaic Dance Theater Group approached me and asked if I would accept a small commission to create a dance theater piece for them for the 2026 season. And this piece is going to be premiered in October of this year. And I actually have some cards here, so if anyone is interested in, taking a card, by all means, I'll pass out some cards later on at the end of the service. Yes, so it came at a great time. Why? Marcy still works full-time, and all of a sudden I had a heck of a lot of time on my hand, right? And it was the kind of thing where, I can go to the gym and I can do this and I can do my yard work and all of that, but there was a lot of time that I had to do something creative. And for those of you that remember during the pandemic, you might have seen that I do have like a little studio downstairs in my basement, and it's my pride and joy, and I love it, and I go down there and I can get creative. So sure enough, here was this great assignment. I was given a script. It's called Cassandra-An Ongoing Tragedy. And the gist of it is, it talks obviously a lot about the things that we talk about here in church, original sin and the evil that is the potential that men have, and so, but by using some of the Greek mythology, it starts out with Pandora's box, and Pandora opens a lid and all the evils escape. And then the author decides to take it into the realm of reality and takes us into these moments in history that are really horrific moments of, the only way we can describe them is just pure evil. Some of the things, and just as one reference, the Sandy Hook massacre that happened in that elementary school, in Connecticut, things like that, that your mind can't wrap itself around, the evil behind that. Why would that happen? Why would these young children, 20 some odd children, just be killed like that? So so the assignment was this: it has a script, it has dancers, and it has actors, and the actors are actually have dialogue and narration, and they're talking to the audience. And my job is to underscore everything. So very much like a film score is what I was writing. I was writing a film score, basically. Ended up being 85 minutes later. So I really had to write a lot of music for this. I was talking a little bit to Pastor Ross about it and how, I tapped all kinds of things. One of the things was the church in Birmingham, Alabama, that was bombed in 1963, and 4 young girls were killed at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan at the time, that kind of thing. And I got Peace Like a River, something we sing here in church, and I made an arrangement of it, and worked with that music, molded that into something very poignant to tell the story behind these girls. And it's extremely rewarding to have written this piece. Now, it takes us through all these moments in history, and then towards the end of this whole piece, Pandora looks in that box one last time and notices that there's still one thing left in the box, and that little thing is called hope. Now, also talking to Pastor Ross, I didn't realize in Greek mythology and in some of the ideas behind the idea of the word hope is that it is an evil. But it's an evil in the sense that we hold on to it. It stays in that box, and unfortunately, by having hope, sometimes evil persists. It could be false hope. But we need that. We need this hope. We need it very badly to continue on. And once again, there's this, and this gets back to Jesus and the whole idea that, yes, as long as we're human, we're flawed. Right? There's not one perfect human in the world, and it's that kind of feeling, and that's kind of the message of this whole thing. But the feeling of hope is important. Now, with all that said, okay, musically, how did I approach this thing? Well, I'm going to just, very quickly, I'm going to play 4 notes, and this is kind of weird, but okay, so what happened is, usually when you open up some of this software that you have for notation, notation is where you're, printing your notes. You want to make sure everything is working correctly. So you might randomly just put some notes in the first measure just to see if it works. So I put those 4 quarter notes in the measure, and it worked. Unbeknownst to me, or at the time, not thinking about it, that became what we call in music the main motive that literally then turns into all these other things within the piece. For example, the girls that were killed, there's a motive for Brenda. Brenda was one of the survivors that tells the story, and part of this music focuses on her music. There's another girl from the Holocaust, Esther, and that ends up being part of her theme. There's a girl, Kim, who was at the My Lai massacre. That ends up being part of her theme. So now you're going to say, well, gee, how did you put it into the theme of hope? Well, let me just give you a quick music lesson. In music, we have something called inversions. So let's say if I did, instead of starting on the first note, I started on the second note. Okay, or I can start on the third note. Actually, that one is Lupe's theme. She's a girl from El Salvador trying to escape El Salvador. And that becomes part of her theme. Okay, so what does this have to do with hope? So hope's theme is this. So what it is now I'm starting on the note C. So if I did this, instead of doing this, if I did this, okay, and did an inversion of that, instead of, and then I added the G. I know this is probably, you're saying, okay, Mike, what is this all about? But the idea is this, is that yes, that theme, which came out of Pandora's box, that music that starts Pandora's box, ends up being part of all those evils that continue throughout history, but also end up even being part of the hope theme. But by turning it around and putting it in the key of C, which is, I know this is silly, but that's what Beethoven did in Symphony No. 5, and it's considered probably the most glorious music ever written is the last movement of Symphony No. 5. And I'm sure you heard it. Well, that was pretty bad. But anyhow, if you listen to it, it's just glorious and beautiful, and he knew the power of the key of C. There's something about this C, this music, when you put it in the key of C. It just sounds uplifting, it sounds joyous. So you're going to hear this music start out in F, and then by the time it escalates, now I do this thing, I call it, and this has nothing to do with Led Zeppelin, I call it the Stairway to Heaven. But what it is it's a series of steps where I modulate keys, and then when you finally get up to the gates of heaven, that's when we're going to enter the key of C. So once again, this whole idea of hope and the whole idea of we're going to a higher place. We're getting to a better place in our life. So anyhow, I don't know if that made any sense to you, but Ross is going to play it now, and just let it flow. And then if you have a question afterward, I'd love to discuss it with you. So here's what it sounds like. And that will be all dance, that's the Dancers of Hope. So, that's the beauty of this piece, too, is to see how it's being interpreted through dance. And so I've been to some of the rehearsals. The rehearsals are in New York City. And, it's exciting to see how they're dancing to the feeling of hope, that's the sense of hope. But, so that's what this thing is all about. And hopefully we won't have technical issues, because that's the thing, you're at the mercy so much when it's music that is created this way, because that's probably some of your questions is, gee, how do you do that, Mike? How do you just create? So there's these software programs. Now, this is not AI. Let me make it explicitly clear that I wrote this music. This is not like some machine or something that composed this music. Everything came out of my head. But you have, you have these sounds at your, to access. So you literally have the sounds of a symphony orchestra. So let's say if you want to call out an oboe, you have an oboe, and it sounds like an oboe. It sounds amazing. And then you have this whole display of what we call articulations in music. So if you want that oboe to hold that note, you have a sustain on that oboe. If you want that oboe to crescendo, to suddenly get loud like we do in choir or whatever, you can put a crescendo mark right under that, and that oboe will start to crescendo. It'll get louder. So, this is, what we call the poor man's orchestra. I mean, it's amazing. How I would only imagine that Beethoven would be cringing, right? Not cringing, he would be so envious, actually, because to have this at your disposal, just to have this at any given time that you can call up an orchestra right there in your house, and that's the exciting part of it. So what you're hearing in your head, you could actually create through the software. So it's been an exciting thing. If you have any questions about it, yes.
Write the music for each musical instrument?
Yes. So that's called the orchestration. So a lot of times when you compose music, you compose it at the piano, and you could have notation paper, and you write the notes down. And that's great. And you could play it on the piano. That would be called the piano transcription. Okay? But now, and a lot of times, a lot of composers do that, and believe it or not, even some very famous ones. Prokofiev used to have some orchestrators, sometimes to help him out, especially if he had to get a large volume of music out. He would call on his secret orchestrators. So the orchestrator is the person who then takes that music and then basically brings in the instruments of the orchestra to interpret the sound of that music. There's a very famous piece called Night on Bald Mountain. It's one of my favorite. It was written by Mussorgsky. Mussorgsky was an incredible composer, wasn't a good orchestrator. And then it was, oh God, I might be drawing a blank, but do you have this information? Another Scheherazade. Oh, Rimsky-Korsakov. Rimsky-Korsakov, many years later, did an orchestration of Night on Bald Mountain, and that's the Night on Bald Mountain that we know. And it's brilliant. The instruments are going crazy, and the music comes alive, and it sounds amazing. That's because Rimsky-Korsakov was an incredible orchestrator. And a matter of fact, his book on orchestration, written, well, the 1800s, late 1800s, to this day is still one of the Bibles on orchestration. Rimsky-Korsakov's book on orchestration. So, yes, orchestrations make a big difference. So it's so exciting for me to be my own orchestrator too, to have that opportunity, not just to write the music, but then to be an orchestrator. So I could tap some of my idols in that direction, like Rimsky-Korsakov. So it's been a growth experience for me. It's been a growth experience. It's been great. And at my age, if you could say you're still doing a growth experience, that's great, right? A little break from mowing the lawn. But yeah, good question, Arlene, yes. And that's the beauty of this software programs you have now at your disposal. It's just amazing. And so it... No, no, not at all. But I think you will enjoy the piece.
A lot of what else you've done.
Well, I think you're going to enjoy this piece if you do decide, and I have these cards. And by the way, so it has two places it's being performed. One is this First Congregation Church in Montclair, New Jersey. That's where the main, the first three big performances are at this First Congregation Church, and it's open to the public, no charge, because it's a non-for-profit, company. Then I'm very excited. Two big performances in New York City, and I saw pictures of the venue. The venue is right near Lincoln Center. 180-seat theater with all the bells and whistles, all the great technology, and those are going to be incredible performances. And yeah, you have to pay for a price. I don't think it's ridiculous, not an exorbitant price, but yes. And the final performance falls on my birthday. So yeah, so there's something about that, Yeah, November 22nd is my birthday, and sure enough, the performances are on the 21st and the 22nd. And that happens to be a Sunday, and it's a 3 p.m. performance, so I will be here in the morning, and I'll go right to the city and be part of that. Well, the beauty of this is I really don't have to be part of it, because they have sound men and they have all the, just like, what Pastor Ross just did, they're going to be in charge of the music, not me. I could be a spectator. Yeah, I'm just going to be there and for the after party. But it's going to be nice, so whatever.
Where do you get your inspiration? Is it easy? Do you sit down and say, oh, I want to do this, or where do you?
That's a great.
Is your experiences that you just draw to create something?
That's a great question, Heidi. And you know what? It's funny because I truly believe you can't teach creativity, and I can't even tell you sometimes where I could tell you that my first piano teacher discovered it in me after maybe the third lesson, because I had a little piece I had to play, and I remember her talking to my mother and saying, well, he played it, but then he added this part at the end, So there was something to that, and I didn't even, know what I was doing. I just thought everyone did that. And then through the years, so by high school I was composing music, and it was just for fun, it was just, and I liked everything from rock, like everyone else. I loved the rock music, but I also loved the classical music that I was studying, so I was writing all kinds of music. And yeah, so I don't know if you could really teach that. I remember when I was in music school, there were much, much better musicians than me. And but then I would do something creative, and they'd look at me as if I was from another planet. How did you come up with that? I said, well, I don't know. So, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. And you maybe pick it up a little bit sometimes when I'm playing the piano. I'm playing the hymns, but gee, they don't sound like the hymns that are written in the book, because they're not. What I'm doing is I'm improvising on the hymns, because that's where I get my excitement. I get my excitement by being creative and just taking them and going somewhere else with them, that kind of thing. Yeah, so to answer your question, Heidi, it just comes natural to me. It doesn't, I can't tell you where it comes from. I could tell you that, for things like when I mentioned about the Birmingham church, I was so excited that I said, my experience from working at Hildale is really coming in handy here, because this is so appropriate. This African-American spiritual that we sing here on a regular basis, I Got Peace Like a River, is perfect. And the irony, of the whole thing is that, these girls are playing before the church service, and they're happy, and they're playing a clapping game that I actually worked into the music. So it sounds like they're doing, and it's into the choreography too, and it's to I Got Peace Like a River. And then when the tragedy happens afterward, what I did is I reversed, I turned the melody of I Got Peace Like a River inside out, upside down. And I played it slower, and I added what we call dissonance, notes that are in a descending line. And these things just come natural to me. In other words, I just kind of know, I have an instinct, okay, if I make this line go down and I add this note, it's going to make it sound sad. And sure enough, all of a sudden, it's, I got peace like river, but you don't recognize it, and it feels very sad after what happened, you know? So it's little things like that that are very exciting to me, but yeah, I can't even, yes, some of it is from your life experience, and others, it just comes, I don't know, from somewhere else. I had to do that Holocaust piece. I was commissioned a long time ago to write that, and I still swear to this day, when I had to write the main theme, it was, if you ever played Ouija board, I know it sounds so corny, but you know, you had to put your fingers on the thing and it started moving to the, you know, and I swear that's what was happening. The notes played. I wrote the song in about a half an hour. It just, you know, it was this, you know, it just came to me. It was like, you know. The fingers started moving. I can't even tell you where it came from. Anyhow, that's enough. But thank you so much. Thank you.